Hello, everyone, and welcome to Circuit Stream's VR 360 Tours workshop and webinar. Now, before I continue on with the introductions, I do want to do a quick AV audio visual check. So could you please let me know in the chat there to the right? Can you hear me and see me? Hey, Kyle. Hola, how's it going? I see Nomi, yes. Faro, yes. Dean, Ruben, Alan, Wen, Jason. Thank you, everyone, for letting me know that you can hear me and see me. And thank you all for joining us for another exciting workshop here at Circuit Stream. Now, before I do continue on, a few housekeeping items that I want to mention and bring up. Now, there is the chat here that you've all kind of seen and maybe interacted with already. There is also a questions tab beside the chat tab. If you have any questions, please toss them into the questions tab. It's easier for us to see what questions have come up, what hasn't been answered. That way we can get to those throughout the presentation as well as at the very end for our Q&A session. Now, beside the questions tab, there is also a polls tab. So I'll be tossing in polls throughout the workshop just to gauge the experience level of everyone and how you may have enjoyed this workshop as well. Now, without further ado, I'll start getting going slowly. I myself am based out of Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Typically for all of these workshops, we have people joining us from all over the world. So let me know in the chat, where are you currently tuning in from? I'm in Canada. Most of our team is based out of North America, but I do see Kirsten here from Los Angeles, Zach as well, Glasgow, lots of Canadians and Americans, Denmark, Serbia, Dobrodošli, Finland, and wow, all over the place, Ireland as well, Singapore, and it's great to have you all with us here on this workshop. Now, for those of you who are located abroad, internationally, outside of North America, this workshop and webinar will be recorded. So if you have to go to sleep, if you have to wake up for work in the morning, wherever you are, don't worry, you'll get the recording sent out to you as soon as we wrap up everything here. But without further ado, let's get started. I'm going to take 10-15 minutes to introduce you all to who we are, what we do here at Circuit Stream, and then we'll dive into the nitty-gritty of VR 360 tours with my colleague, which should take about 30-ish minutes or so. Then I'll come back, wrap it up, and we'll open it up for our in-depth Q&A session. But, you know, a little bit about me. So my name is Stefan, and I'm part of the education team here at Circuit Stream. I have over 6 years of experience in the tech industry, working with travel IT companies, learning management systems, ERP and business integration platforms, as well as the world of virtual reality and augmented reality. Now, a little icebreaker, in fact, about myself. I was a member of Water Polo Canada and trained with the 2008 Beijing Olympic team. Never got to go to the Olympics, but nonetheless, a great experience and thoroughly enjoyed it. Now, today I will be joined by my colleague, Usman or Ozzy Mir. And Ozzy is our lead instructor and XR developer here at Circuit Stream. He has over 10 years of Unity experience, several years of VR and AR development experience, and a little icebreaker, in fact, about Ozzy here. He's a member of a jazz band, specifically playing the drums. So for all you music enthusiasts out there, feel free to give Ozzy a shout, and I'm sure he'd be more than happy to dive into his music experience, maybe even how it works with this technology as well. Now, a little bit about us here at Circuit Stream, who we are, what we do. So Circuit Stream was started in 2015 when everyone was on the hype train of building VR and AR apps. We noticed a gap in helping people learn how to develop these themselves. And since 2015, we've taught over 30,000 people how to create, manage, and implement virtual reality and augmented reality projects and experiences. We're a team of about 20 located around the world, as you can see on the slide here, mainly in North America and South America, but colleagues in Europe and Asia as well. Now, we're all familiar with anything AR and VR, all of the devices, the platforms, the creation engines. So if you do have any questions for our team, toss them into the chat, into the questions tab, let us know. We're always more than happy to help answer those for you. Now, backstage, I have many of my colleagues joining us as well. For those of you who are joining from Circuit Stream, say hi in the chat. You'll see Kyle, Dayon, Vlad, Jason, Jerry, a number of people. So they'll be chatting there, happy to answer your questions and guiding you along the way. Now, Circuit Stream is a Unity certified training partner. And training partners are approved based on their expertise, focus on quality education, and commitment to providing the highest level of training available. Circuit Stream is also an official channel partner with Unity. And that means that we deliver training and application development services in the architecture, engineering and construction, automotive, transportation, and manufacturing markets. Now, there's three things that we really do here at Circuit Stream. And the one we started off in 2015, our bread and butter and what we mainly focus on here is education and training. And these are just some of our, let's say, students, participants, and partners that we've had the pleasure to have in our courses and teach them anything and everything about virtual reality and augmented reality development. Now, we've mainly done this through two courses. The first, our XR Development with Unity course. It's beginner friendly, and for those of you looking to learn more about this industry, get into it, find a career, whatever it may be, the next course we're holding is December 1st, followed by every 2 months from then. Now, if you're not a beginner and maybe already familiar with Unity, C#, all of the nitty-gritty of VR and AR development, we have our advanced course, the XR Project Accelerator Program, and this starts January 5th. So if you're looking to take your skills to the next level, I'd suggest checking that out, and it might be something for you there. Now, what differentiates us from all the other kind of educational programs and institutions out there? Well, the biggest value and the biggest differentiating factor is our one-on-one support and mentorship. All of our courses are project-based, where we help you build your own ideas, projects, babies into some sort of prototype, proof of concept, or app that you can take and work with later on. Now, I won't get into these too much, but today was a big day for us here at Circuit Stream. We launched several new short courses tailored to specific needs, from the Oculus Quest to the HoloLens to artistic and design domains, VR prototyping, you name it. So if you're interested in something specific and not wanting to get the whole picture, check it out, circuitstream.com/learning. Now, the second thing that we do here at Circuit Stream, alongside education and training, is XR content creation and consultation. So all of our instructors are current XR developers working with other companies to build them projects, help them implement it, and manage experiences and simulations at their workplace. Now, the third thing that we do here at Circuit Stream, alongside education and training, as well as content creation, is an XR platform that allows people to host their AR, VR projects on, scale, distribute, and manage those applications, as well as to track, measure, and analyze learning activities. Now, now that you've learned a little bit about us, who we are and what we do here at Circuit Stream, why are you all here today? What are you going to learn? Well, today you're going to learn how to set up a scene with 360 images. You'll also learn how to set up a VR-capable scene in Unity, how to implement VR controls and input, as well as how to implement ray casting to point and click on an image to move to another 360 image. So super exciting. Ozzy's going to dive into it here shortly. But, I love to ask this on all of our workshops and webinars, and I'm going to toss in a poll right now just to gauge the experience level here. But let me know in that polls tab, how much Unity experience do you have on a scale of 0 to 10? 0 being never heard of Unity before, 10 being that you're the Chuck Norris, a Jedi Master in Unity. You could even come and maybe teach some of our courses here. So I'm just going to take at the results. It seems like we've got a lot of beginners in Unity, lots of 0s, 1s, 2s, some 5s, 6s, and 7s. So it's a nice mix, but mostly beginners from what I see here. And no worries at all. We're here to guide you all along the way. Now, for those of you who said zero, what is Unity? Well, Unity is a free 3D development engine for building games, simulations, and experiences. It's the easiest way to begin making apps for XR. Now, XR stands for extended reality. It's the umbrella term for both virtual reality and augmented reality, kind of capturing everything in one simple term. So, how does one actually go about creating their own VR app, their own AR app, a VR 360 tour? Well, you have an idea, that little light bulb there, and you take that idea and you bring it into a creation engine like Unity. You create your project, you optimize your application, and then you use it or push it out to an SDK, a software development kit, which then goes out to the relevant headset that you had built for. So again, you take your idea, you build it in Unity, you use an SDK to push it out to a certain device, and voila, there is your own project that you have created. Now, now that we're on the topic of VR 360 tours, what are VR 360 tours? Well, a 360 virtual tour, and let's just start with what is a virtual tour. A 360 virtual tour is a tool with actual photography from a number of 360-degree cameras that are essentially stitched together to appear as a seamless whole. Now, it provides photos or videos of a given environment, such as, real estate, homes, hotels, resorts, casinos, education, tourism destinations, restaurants, clubs, you name it, really any environment. And viewers can look around within the content created. Typically, if we're just going to stick to a 360 tour, typically through tablets, computers, desktops, clicking around the experience. Now, what is a virtual reality 360 tour? Well, kind of similar, but not at the same time. In the most basic of explanations, virtual reality is a way to immerse users in an entirely virtual world. With VR 360 tours, you use a headset where you are able to interact with the surroundings and are essentially granted basic freedoms that basic 360 video simply can't match. So instead of clicking around, dragging your mouse, looking at things, you put on a headset and you can actually look around this 360 tour that you created, walk through it, click around and explore, moving your head instead of just the mouse. So simply put, you can control the experience and it can create an alternate world for you and place you inside it. But, enough of this introduction and about myself. Today is all about VR 360 tours, and I would like to take this chance to invite Ozzy onto the stage. Again, it's a pleasure and an honor to have Usman join us and to lead this VR 360 tour, where you will all learn how to use raycasting, how to create your own 360 tour and 360 images in virtual reality. So I'm just going to take a pause here. I'm going to go over the questions tab while we wait for Ozzy to join us. Looks like we have one question there, so I'll save it to the very end of the presentation. But Ozzy, great seeing you, man of the hour. You are all in great hands. So Usman's going to take about 30 minutes to go through this, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. I'll come back. I'll wrap up the presentation here, give you some extra resources to take your skills to the next level, and then we'll open up for our in-depth Q&A session. Now, I do want to just check if Ozzy is available here. I do see that his screen's off. Perfect. Mic's good. Awesome. Well, hey, I'll be here, guys. I'll help in the chat and in the questions tab. Ozzy, thank you again for joining us, and I'll catch you all in a bit here.
All right. Thank you, Steph. You guys can hear me all right, hopefully. And I'm happy to be here. We're going to talk about some 360 VR experiences. So I created a simple 360 scene in Unity, give you the framework to be able to make your own experiences and, get more complex with it if you need to. But with that said, let's do a quick little demo Let me share my screen here. There we go. All right. So there is my screen. This is Unity. On the left here is what I will see in the headset. By the way, this is the Oculus Quest. Now I'm using a link cable, attaching it to my computer so I can use it as if it's the Oculus Rift. That aside, on the right is my scene view. This is the Quest 1. The scene view is me as the developer. This is where I get to move around and, adjust my scene and develop my world, place things in and all that good stuff. Now on the right, like I said, here is my other thing. So there we go. So as I can see, I've got my controllers. I'm just using nice simple cubes to make this experience as easy as possible for you guys. Now, if I'm holding down the trigger, we're going to have a laser pointer appear. You guys can also replace this cube with a 3D model of a controller or a actual hand or something. Now, when I hover my mouse over one of these targets, I'm just going to make sure I am actually pointing at it. Yeah. And I let go. Bam, I change to the next scene. And when I'm in VR, it's pretty seamless. And next, change. And finally, the last one is actually a VR 360 video. A 360 video. As I can look around all over the place. And the video aspect, again, quite simple. It's pretty cool. There's also sound. Unfortunately, you guys won't be able to hear that, but there it is. Looks like it's the Quest 1. Yes. Black color indeed. All right. So let's get started. See how we can do this. Just gonna take the headset off for now. We'll dive in. All this works on Quest 2 as well as PCVR. That is correct. Yeah, that's correct. I just need to add a little extra library here or there, but that should do it. All right, so let's start by taking a look at what Unity looks like by default. I'm going to do a quick explanation of the default of just Unity, where you're able to just understand what's going on, because, well, I see that there's a lot of beginners out here with zero experience with Unity. So like Steph explained earlier, Unity is a creation tool. It's beautiful software, allows you to make some powerful 3D experiences, as well as being the most popular mobile dev tool as well. I think 70% of applications are mobile applications are made with Unity, and VR it's taken over, or I think it's the majority of VR as well right now, and AR, which you should check out some of the AR apps as well. Okay. Oculus Quest Link works with the cord it comes with, the $80 cord. They sell improves latency, but the regular one works just fine for testing. And Zach, that's a good point. Actually, I haven't actually noticed a difference between the two. They both work very much the same rate. Whatever difference they are mentioning about the link is so incredibly negligible to me anyways. Okay, so Unity. This is what it looks like when you first started off. Like I was explaining earlier, this in the middle here is actually the scene view. This is like you as the developer, you get to fly around in your world and, potentially move things around. So here's an icon for the light, the sun, as it were. If I'm looking up on the screen and I move this thing around, I can change the sun, maybe make it nighttime and stuff. And I can also move things around as well, all that stuff in the scene view. A recording will, in fact, be available after. Now, the objects that I select are listed here in the hierarchy window. And the hierarchy refers to the ability to make this parent-child relationship between objects. And I'll come to that later. On the right side here is the inspector window. This is basically listing off all the components, a bunch of information as well about a selected object. Now, each of these things that are in my scene, this is the light object, this is the camera object. In code, you refer to them as game objects. And if I select one, you can see it has a bunch of information here, such as its name, whether it's on or off, the tag that it has, the layer that it's in, whether or not it's static, any sort of gizmo that's special for it, the transform, which tells us its position, rotation, and scale, the camera. Well, this is the camera, so this is its biggest component. This is what we're going to mess with a little bit. And the audio listener is your ears in VR, as well as in any application. The directional light, as you can see, also has a transform, which will be a pattern going forward. Pretty much everything has one, except for UI elements, which have rect transforms, similar. And the light, it has a light component unique to that, and you can mess around with those. At the bottom here, you will probably only see a scenes folder, right, and one scene in it, the sample scene. And you won't see a script or materials folder. I created those for this project. This is where you store all your files, not just code, but such things as materials and the like. Pictures, materials, 3D models, all that stuff, music, sound files. All right, great. Now, I'm in the scene view here, but there is actually another tab here. It's called the game tab. This is the game view. This is when I'm testing the application out. It's going to be visualized over here. On the bottom, I also have this console window. This warns me about certain things potentially going wrong, allows me to debug statements. So when I want to intentionally have something written here, I can put that in my code. And if there's an error, something went wrong, it'll tell me here as well. Okay, so that's the general interface. Now in Unity, if you want to fly around and stuff, I'm going to just tell you a couple mechanics in the course. We get more in depth with this. But if I wanted to kind of fly around, I would hold down the right mouse button. I can look around with that. If I want to move around, I'd hold down the middle mouse button. I can move around with that. I can also use the arrow keys. If I hold down the right mouse button to look around, I can also, while holding it down, use the WASD keys to fly around as well. If I don't have a keyboard and I want to pan, there's a little move tool there, which I can press the Q key with. Hey, Toronto, that's where I first came. Okay, that's where I grew up for a year. And yeah, so that's kind of navigation. There's a lot more to it, but that's one of them. My favorite is if I select an object, hold the Alt key, and then kind of move around with the left mouse button. Anyways, you could use WASD to fly. Yeah, handy. Oh, well, yeah, even for the experienced people, I guess it's kind of nice to know. So if I'm not looking at something, I have it selected. I can either double click on it or I press the F key while my mouse is in the scene view. I can zoom in. I can focus in on it. If I hold the Alt key, it might be the Option key for Macs. I can then use the right mouse button to zoom in and out with more fine control rather than using the scroll wheel, which has snap rotation, snap zooming. I can also hold the Shift key, which can then dramatically increase the speed of that. If I use the left mouse button while holding down the Alt key, I can keep my focus on an object, but rotate around it versus just rotating around myself, that kind of thing. So a lot of ways to move around. If I select an object, you can see that there's a lot of options to manipulate the object, such as the move tool. So if I first Q, the QWERTY are shortcuts for tools if you're not holding down the right mouse button. So Q is the pan tool. W allows me to move the object around, pulling these things or clicking and dragging those squares. There's special ways. You like hold the control key, you can snap it and all these things. The rotate tool, if I press the E for echo over here, that tool, I can rotate things. I can freeform rotate things as well, which is always difficult to work with. If I use the R, that's the scaling tool. I'm going to really scale a camera. It doesn't really make much sense. Then I have the T for the rect scale and stuff, which it's not really, doesn't really work on camera. Anyways, that is some basic navigation and manipulation in Unity. So let's dive into actually making our scene. So right now, by default, I have a main camera and a directional light in my scene. Let's start by bringing in some spheres and making them into 360 images, as well as one that is a 360 camera. So in my materials folder here, I have brought in a couple pictures, 360 photos, one of Paris and one of some dock somewhere. I'm not sure exactly where. And I brought in a 360 video. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a sphere. So I'm going to right click in here and some empty gray space here, or I will go up to the top game object, 3D object sphere, or at the bottom or the top right, top left here. And so a lot of ways to do the same thing. But there we go. So I'm just going to right click in here, go down to 3D object, create a sphere. Bam, there I go. I've got one in there. Now, I think it'll be easiest if I just set the sphere's position in the transform to 0 in the X, 0 in the Y, and 0 in the Z. So you can see it's all there. I'm going to do the same thing with the camera. I'm just going to 0 out or reset its position. Oh, accidentally clicked on that exclamation mark. Will you touch on stereo imaging? We won't get into stereo this time. You can enable that ability in the XR settings. We can talk more about it towards the end there. But yeah. So here is the main camera positioned at 000 and the sphere positioned at 000. When you're looking at this world, think of a Cartesian plane, but then we also gave it a height or gave it a depth, right? And X, Y, Z, as explained, this is the X direction, the Z direction, and the Y direction. That's the idea. Good tip. Thanks, Zach. What did Zach say? Okay. Yeah, okay. With that there, what we're going to do is if I go inside the sphere, you know, all of a sudden I can see right through it. That's it's a bit of an issue. So what I need to do is instead flip the surface of it. Now, the way a lot of these games are designed, and if I can bring over another image, I'll just actually use Paint for this one. So I have my paint.net being used elsewhere right now. There we go. So whenever you ever have some geometry in the world, so let's say something like this, typically it only renders the one side. It does not render this side of it. This way, it saves some processing power because, you know, if you're running your application, there's no reason for your camera ever to be inside of another object, typically. And obviously, that's not the case in our application, but generally speaking, you don't need to see the inside. So they just don't render it. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to flip the surface of these objects because, well, we don't need to see the outside. We only need to see the inside because our camera is going to be on the inside and it's going to be looking at the walls, basically. That's the idea. So we've created this giant sphere and we're going to, instead of being able to see it from the outside, we're going to flip the normals such that we can see it from the inside. So I'm looking at the sphere from outside. If I go in, I can't see anything because it doesn't render the inside. So what I'll do is I'm going to apply this. I'm going to create a material. Just call it new material for now. I will apply it to the sphere. The sphere will have it, and I will apply our unlit flip normal shader to it. If it will let me here, one sec. There we go. So now I can see it from the inside, right? There we go. Now, what's happening now is I can see it from the outside as well as from the inside. Why is that? Well, what's happening in this case now is before, when we had our object only visible from the outside, we could still see everything, but not from the inside. It would just not block any light. What's happening now is if I'm looking at the inside, I can see the entire wall render. I'm surrounded. But if I'm looking at it from the outside, like this, oh, there's my eyeball and all that. When I'm looking at it from the outside, I don't see this surface, but I see the back surface. So for me, it looks as though I'm seeing it completely. Can Unity render the sphere with normals on outside and on the inside, two-sided rendering? Yes. So you're looking for certain shaders. So this thing that I have here is will make available to you. It's an unlit in-out shader. So it turns the normals inside out, but there are what are called double-sided shaders. You can definitely Google double-sided shader Unity. And yeah, free double-sided shader. It's like available. You just get a shader for free. Totally, I'm sure of it being copyright free and all that. But yeah, those kinds of things. So with the shader implementation, that's how we're creating these effects. So once again, in our project folder, we have the ability to create some assets. So I created a materials folder. I dragged and dropped in some pictures. This one. Oh, did not mean to duplicate anything. 1 sec. Get rid of that. Yeah, this guy here, this guy, and this video. So those 3 things I brought in, and I created a material for each of them. And then I just created this unlit material just now. Okay, so to make this work, what I did step by step was I right-click in here. Oh, let me make sure I start the timer here. Probably much less than that by now, but hopefully that'll still limit me a decent amount. Okay, so I created a material like so. Bam, material, and let's call this one Paris 1, for example. I create my sphere, this guy here, and I just position it at 0, 0, 0. I made sure my camera is also at 0, 0, 0, right? Same position. I got my sphere going. I'm going to take this material, drag and drop it onto the sphere. Now the sphere, you can see, has this material applied to it. And now with the sphere, I can just take our shader, drag and drop it onto the material. Bam. It's now inside out. It can render from the inside, and we're good. Now, all we have to do is take our picture, so in my case, Paris 1, and apply it to our material. See, the material has a texture slot there. Just drag and drop it in there, and bam, we've got an inside out photo. Now, this is a pretty low quality photo. You can definitely get a better one than this, but here it is, 360 photo. And we've got our camera inside there already, so you would have a pretty basic one going. So with that said, we've applied that to our sphere. What we need is a couple of these. Okay. Now, we got one here. What we're going to do next is, let me just bring this up here, is get another sphere with the second photo. So I would create another sphere. Let me just rename this one. So if I click on this, press F2, I can rename this to Paris, for example. I will create another sphere, 3D object sphere, same location here. And I'm going to create another material, put the texture on it, put the unlit in-out shader on that material, just like we did. And I would make that one into this dock photo. Now we've got 2 going, and let's get one more. I'm going to create another sphere. Let me rename this one to docks. Let's go with that. I'm going to create another sphere, our last sphere, but this one won't be a photo sphere. This will be our video sphere. I create a material, just like I've been doing. Where's the material section? So I right click in here, go up to create material, and I'm going to call this one 360 movie for now, because I already created a video one. So I'm going to take this one, drag and drop it onto here. And once again, I want to make this into a unlit shader. So I'm just going to take our unlit shader in out, apply it there, bam, it's white. What I'll do with this is in here, if I select that sphere, can you copy paste this first sphere with the material and the double-sided shader and just switch the photos? It will override the materials property. So for example, let's say I took this one, I duplicated them over here. And if I go into its material over here, and then I decide to change it to the Paris one, see it do it to both, because this is a shared material. It's not its own copy. So you do have to create multiple materials. Does the 360 image get distorted depending on the sphere size, or is there a 1080p or 4K nomenclature for spheres resolutions? That's a great question. Now, there's a few things that come into mind. So the photos resolution is one thing, but the sphere itself, I'm using a primitive sphere from Unity, which you can actually see the, it's not perfectly curved. So it doesn't actually have that many pixels on it either, but it's largely to do with the sphere. Now, the bigger it gets, the further away it is from you as well, and I'll show that momentarily. So it won't really matter about the size. It's really the distance. Or sorry, it's really the quality of the image that matters. Okay, so this last one here, this unlit sphere, I'm going to just add a video to it. So I have a video, 360 video here. All I actually have to do is just drag and drop the video onto this sphere. Bam, and it will add for me a video player component. I just unplug my Amazon Alexa there. So I will automatically add a video player component, and it will automatically put the appropriate video clip in there, and we're good. We don't have to do anything with that. You can change the volume or something if you want, the playback speed and whatnot, but that's it. We got our 3 spheres. Now, our camera is pretty close to the walls of these things. So these spheres are way too small. I'm going to just select all these spheres. I'm going to select the last sphere there. I'm just going to rename it to video. Select all of these spheres, and once again, just set their position to 0, 0, 0. So they're all at the same location. No preview of the video. Oh, it's if you select the video here, you can see it down here in the preview section. Right? If you select anything, you can see a preview at the bottom right. Now, with these 3 things positioned, I actually only want to see one at a time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the docs and video, and I'm going to go over here to the top left of the inspector window and just disable it. So those 2 are off. So now if I move this one around, we don't have any issues. And I'm going to switch between the different spheres and toggle which one's on and off, that kind of thing. Okay, so that's done. Regardless of that, though, size of these spheres, I'm going to set to a large amount, like just make them huge. Make them so big that if I move my head around, I don't really see the image going. It's easier to do that than trying to make a 360 image where you're not able to move around at all. That can be a little daunting. You should allow a little bit of leeway here and there. Anyways, I'll just set the scale of these images to about 100, 100, 100 in the transform. Now I'm here. If I look around, I'm surrounded. I can move a little bit. And then when you have a stereoscopic version of your 360 images, it's a pretty cool effect that you can achieve as well. But there we go. So I've got my 360 images. They're nicely scaled. I'm going to save that as a new scene. I'm going to save that as our workshop scene. Okay. So I've got the images and the videos in 360 prepared. It was that easy. Bam, out of the way. Now, to make it capable with our VR packages, and if you can dive deeper into the shader, but shaders can be quite complex, and nowadays we have shader graph to make it a bit easier. Now, to make this VR capable, we need to include a couple of things. So if I go to the top of my screen here under Window, and I go down to Packages, the Package Manager, I should say. Package Manager is going to have a giant list of packages. It's still loading them in here, but the ones that you need, especially in my case, includes Oculus Desktop. You want that one. So you want to scroll through these. Oculus Desktop, OpenVR Desktop, as well as the XR legacy input helpers, doing the classic way. It's comfortable on my Vive as well, that's why. So Oculus Desktop install, OpenVR Desktop install, and XR legacy input helpers install. Get those 3 packages in your project, and it's solid. It's good to go. The XR interaction toolkit, I've been having some problems working it on my Vive. That's the issue. That's why I'm also using the Oculus Quest as well. Noticed some needs to mature a little bit more on some of the VR devices. Now, that being said, on the top left, go up to File, down to Build Settings. Oh, you can see it. I also had to. I also have the Vive over here. Anyways, now the next bit is then to go to Build Settings, go down to Player Settings, and here, through these options, you get to this XR settings option. All you need to do is just enable virtual reality supported with a little checkbox. You can do this exact same stuff with the XR interaction toolkit, just using the different input code. It's not going to be much of a transition, really. It'll be easier a little bit, I think, to go from this to that. Now, in the XR settings, we have the virtual reality supported checkbox. I enabled that, and we're good to go. If you have one of the missing SDKs, you just click on this little plus symbol and make sure those 2 are included. Okay, great. We're set. We've got VR support. If I select my main camera, it will now officially become a VR camera. If I hit play, we can hopefully see this in action. So if I'm moving my headset already, I've got VR support. That's all I needed to do. Right? VR head. Now what I need to do is get the controllers in there. Now, generally speaking, a good practice is to create this empty game object. So I would go in here, create an empty game object. This thing has nothing but a transform. All it's storing is the position, rotation, and scale. I'm just going to call this my VR root. I can change the name up here. I'm just going to center it out 0, 0, 0, so it's in the same spot as my camera is. Call that the VR root. I'm going to drag and drop the main camera as a child of this VR root. If I move the VR root around, the main camera is moving with me. If I rotate the VR root, the main camera, as you can see with these lines, is rotating with me. These kinds of things. Okay, now with that said, I'm going to include some cubes to represent as my controllers. So I'm going to right click in here, go down to 3D object, cube. I've got that going. I've got this cube. I'm going to just scale this down because that's way too big. So this is like the raw version to do this. I'm just going to set its scale to 0.1, 0.1. And in the Z, I might set it to 0.2. I like the forward direction to help me figure that out. There we go. And on these cubes, I'll kind of rush through the stuff a little bit more. You'd select the cube, you'd add a component called a track pose driver. Track pose driver, you would change its device from generic XR device to generic XR controller. And in this case, it defaults to left controller. So this track pose driver just made that work for me. I can then duplicate this cube. And this second cube, I'll make it my right controller. Actually, before I even do that, I'll just duplicate it at the end where everything is done. So this cube, I'm just going to rename it to left hand. I'll leave the right hand for later. It'll be easier when I just duplicate it when it's got everything on it. So there's my left hand. Okay, and if I take a look at my game view for a second, and I move my hand in front of my camera, let's say, move my hand in front of my camera, you can see how it doesn't show up for some time. It doesn't show up until it's this far away. That's quite a distance between the player, because you can see that the main camera has this thing called a near clipping plane. This is also true with the XR interaction toolkit as well. Now, they may have it set automatically, but what you want to do is select that main camera and change its clipping plane so that the near clipping plane is right up to it. So now you can see your hand when it's up in your face. You don't have to, you don't have to keep it a certain distance to be visible. Those kinds of properties are interesting to edit. So I've got my left hand. It's got the tracked pose driver. One of the things I want to give it is a line renderer. This line renderer is going to be responsible for making it visible that I'm pointing somewhere. I'm going to add a component. I'm going to call it a line renderer, like so. So this line renderer, its goal is to kind of like face me the entire time. I'm going to start by changing some of these properties. First, this line renderer. I'm going to change its width. Let's change that down to 0.03. That's a bit better, right? So that was in the line renderer components. It's one of its properties. You can mess around with all of them. Like you can get pretty crazy with it. I just changed the width, the static value there to 0.03. Now, beyond that, I can also add some like end cap vertices to round off these edges here. Like so. Makes it look nicer. It's our escape room, but not VR. Doing it for HTML to run on the web. May go back and add VR support and drop on SideQuest. Nice. Sweet, yeah. VR escape rooms are my favorite way to introduce someone to VR dev. There's just so much freedom there to do whatever interactions you want. All right, so that I've got my line. Line's looking good. That's set up. That's good enough. I'm just going to change the material. Instead of it being none, I'm going to just make it the default line material, and maybe the color, instead of being white, I'll just change that to red. You know, all these little neat things you can do. So once again, that color thing was just, first I added a default material by clicking down here in this material section, changes it to the default line. The actual color, I click in the actual square and then click on these little these arrows at the bottom and then change the color there. I've got my red line looking good. However, I don't need it to be on all the time. I only want it to be on when I'm pulling the trigger. That's the goal there. So I'm going to disable that component. As you can see, this line renderer, the little checkbox, bam, it's turned off for now. I'm going to toggle it whenever I squeeze the trigger. But I've got the components I wanted. So now I'm going to duplicate this hand. Bam, duplicated. I'm going to rename it to right hand, like so. I'm going to change the tracked pose driver. Instead of saying pose source left controller, it's going to say right controller. There we go. I'm just going to save my scene periodically here. So now if I try it, if I hit play, let's get that going. Let's see here. I've got my controllers. Huzzah. Now, if I wanted, I could enable these line renderers, right? And you can see that they're not really affected. Sorry, there we go. You can see the line renderers aren't really affected. So we're going to code their behavior. Now, temporarily, just for fun, I can make it such that they don't use world space, like that. Same thing with the right hand. And now I've kind of got like little lasers, maybe increase the size of them a little bit. Here we go. Huzzah, I've got little lightsabers. Anyways, so that's something to keep in mind. Those line renderers don't default. Are you using 360 pics? I am indeed. That's my big project, creating VR STEM escape rooms for educational purposes. Nice, Eric. I love that. I used to actually work for a company which teaches STEM to kids. Okay. Left hand, right hand, main camera. We're looking good. We've got our VR rig set up, so it's already 360 experience. I can look around. I've got hands which have hidden lasers. I'm going to use these lasers to point at a given location. Let's take a look at some code we can drop on. So I've got some scripts here. I'm going to drop onto these controllers this sample pointer code. Bam. And I'm going to just drag and drop the line renders into them. This one's got the right hand, this one needs to get the left, right? So I added a script to it, which is like another component essentially. If I select one of these hands, you can see the script is there and it says line render. By default, it's going to say none. So you just drag and drop the line render into there and bam, it's referenced. Now, we need to create some VR input, but I'm going to just temporarily type it in, left trigger, and we can see it in action. Left trigger, and if I select the right hand, set it to be right trigger. And now, if I take a look at this, pull the left hand there, right hand there, pulling the triggers, shows me the lines. So I've got that going. And this code is actually also setting up the system. Now, apart from the input, you can use the XR interaction toolkit. You can open VR. You can use, MRTK or what have you. The key aspect here is this stuff there. This is universal. So we've got a reference for a line render. This is what the code kind of looks like here. This stuff here is going to be there by default. So this stuff is all that we've actually written. So the other stuff is there kind of on its own. We've got some libraries. This gives us more functionality in terms of what we can do in the code. We've got the name of the script essentially, and its accessibility, the inheritance and stuff. All this is, what's helpful for using certain functions, as it were. My main plan is to build a cartoony lab environment, aka a la job simulator. Oh, I'll have to show you guys my VR game here momentarily as well, if you guys are interested. Now, apart from that, this script, basically we check to see if the person is squeezing the trigger more than 80%, essentially. If they are, we just keep track of that. What we're doing is we're enabling the line and we're setting its initial position to our hand and its second position to just 10 meters forward, that kind of thing, and turning it back off when it's not true. So that's looking good. Now, in terms of the input, we mapped it in OpenVR, but again, you can use XR Interaction Toolkit. So this particular aspect is not it's not the same. However, both the XR Interaction Toolkit and MRTK, the Interaction Toolkit and OpenVR are both platform agnostic. Now, to do the input manager, we would go up to the top left here, click on Edit, go down to Project Settings, and go to Input Manager. This is where we can see our custom inputs, or all the inputs that are there by default, the 18, and then we can add more and start editing our inputs, such as our triggers. If you are interested in using OpenVR Input Manual, it's marked as legacy a little bit early. If you even speak to the Unity employees themselves, they say it's a bit early to say this is legacy. But here it is. This gives you a chart of all the inputs there are for OpenVR. Here we are. And so the key things here are these numbers that you're getting. And so these numbers are particularly useful for our left controller, right controller triggers, say number 9 and 10. The way we use them in Unity is we would create our input, give it a name we want, left trigger. This one is not a button, it's an axis. So I'm going to make sure that the button values are empty. The sensitivity, I want to set it to 1 because if it's not 1, if I touch it even a little bit, if I squeeze it even a little bit, it considers that as you fully squeezing it. So we want these values that are in between. So that's why we decrease the sensitivity. Yeah, correct. Technically, this is increasing the sensitivity in a way, but no, it's decreasing. It's decreasing. Now, the type of input is no longer a key, which is like your buttons. It's a joystick axis. And the axis that it is, the left controller trigger was 9, and the right trigger was 10. If you take a look at something else, like the cancel button, you can say it's the escape key, joystick button 1. That's how you map out buttons. You just say joystick button and then the number, these kinds of things. So worth checking out with joystick. With buttons, you also just say the type is a key or mouse button, and the axis, it doesn't matter. Now, I know this is a lot to take in, but worth checking out in the back. It would be nice to see the feed in full screen, just the interface. I don't know if that's a thing. Let me close myself. Hopefully, I'm about to close my view. Doesn't seem to change it. Yeah, no, I don't think I can. I think if I escape, if I close myself, I stop being able to talk. Nice. So with that said, we've got our input mapped. Now I've written some code here, which is our official code, which goes through raycasting stuff. So the raycasting is what's actually going to determine where we're pointing using physics. And I created a layer so that only gates matter and all these kinds of things. So, good time, good time. All right. So this is what we'll attach, and you guys can read through this and kind of dissect what's going on if you want. It'll all be included in the GitHub. So I'm going to go to my left and right hand. I'm going to remove the sample one for now. Just drag and drop the pointer, the official one. The gate layer will be gate. Trigger names, left trigger and right trigger. And such, there we go. Left, there we go. Right hand, drag and drop the line render into there so that we get these references, these kinds of things. So we're filling these out, and since they're public variables, you can see them in the inspector and access them from elsewhere. Anyways, here we go. I'm hoping to, perhaps I can decrease the resolution of my screen to help with you guys with that. Let's give that a go. Unity can be difficult to see for sure. Now, with that said, we've got our inputs there. Let's take a look at the code. There we go. Hopefully that's a bit more legible for y'all. Cool. Now, we've got our code for the actual raycasting. When it comes to the actual gate placement, let's move my console window down a little bit. What we want to do is decide on a location for our gate. So I'm going to right click in here, 3D object sphere, for example. Got my little sphere going. What I'm going to do with it is first, let's make it a bit bigger, a bit too small, like this. There's my gate. I'm going to then, let's just move it over here. Let's say it's over here. That's my gate location. Now you can design your gate to look like whatever you want it to look like, right? It doesn't have to be a simple sphere. It could be more magical than that. And I love magic, so that's another thing. I can understand that this isn't the prettiest gate, but gets the job done, right? So now this gate, what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to first, let's minimize these. I'm going to put it into the default layer. You got to make sure that you have this. So if I select the sphere at the top right, I have layer default. I want to put it in the gate layer. Now, if you don't have that, you would go down to add layer, type in gate, and it would work. You then go back and set it to gate. So I've got this sphere in this gate layer. What I'm going to do now is attach this gate script to the sphere. I'm going to rename this to gate, like so. And I'm just going to make it a child of Paris, this Paris sphere that I have, just so that it turns off when this Paris thing turns off. You can see the gate script is looking for the current gate, so that's Paris. I should say the current scene. And perhaps it should transition to the docks. There we go. When I pull the trigger on that, it will turn off Paris and turn on docks. So now let's do that ourselves and add another gate. So I'm going to just select the previous gate, duplicate it, bring it into the docks, and let's say, who knows, in here. This is the next gate. And in here, instead of turning off the Paris gate, it turns off docks in the current gate and turns on video as the next gate. Save that, hit play, let's test it out. So I've got my thing here. So I'm pointing at this, I let go, and I load into the next next gate. So I'm going to temporarily go through that beginning section. Hit play. All right. So that is us creating a VR 360 experience. So we'll do some more Unity questions towards the end, or whatever kind of questions you guys like, for a Q&A period after. If you guys are interested in, seeing what I've made, I can show you during the Q&A period as well. Thank you guys for coming. Steph's going to do a quick takeover here, and I'll see you later.
Fabulous. Thank you very much, Ozzy. Always a pleasure to have you here with us. And Lee, we'll get Ozzy to share his little VR game at the end here. But thank you everyone again for sticking around for Ozzy's piece and part here. Eric, glad that you found that useful. Jamie, anytime. Now I'm going to toss in another poll here, and very curious to know. It helps us know whether or not we should continue hosting these workshops. On a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend this workshop to others? It really helps us know if we should continue hosting these types of workshops, find different topics to cover on a weekly basis. So please let us know. Would you recommend this to someone? 10 being yes, I would, and 0 being nope, never going to come back. But it really helps us out a lot. So I'm going to take 5 minutes here just to quickly wrap this up. Then we'll invite Ozzy back onto the stage. I know we have a lot of questions in the questions tab here we haven't answered, so we'll get Ozzy and some of the team to help cover those. Now, I know we flew through this quite quickly, and we do take it much slower in our courses, but no matter what your interest is, if it's a personal interest, a work interest, just curious, looking to upskill yourself, maybe change current industries you're working in, or to join this world of AR and VR, we would love to have you with us. Now, again, we have various courses, and our flagship one, the one we've been holding for several years now, is our XR Development with Unity course. This is live and online, beginner friendly, 4 hours a week over 10 weeks to help you learn how all of this comes together and to create your own VR AR experiences using Unity. Again, we'll focus on Unity, the C# side of things, weekly support on your own personal projects, and beginner friendly. So no experience required. Newbies, beginners, have no fear. We would love to have you with us, and we welcome everyone from all walks of life. Now, for those of you who are saying, Steph, this was pretty easy for me, I'm already an expert or experienced in this, feel free to check out our XR Project Accelerator course. This one is our advanced program, quote unquote, for those already experienced with Unity and C#. This is 8 weeks long, not 10 weeks long, 6 hours of instruction with us per week, 3 hours in class, 3 private sessions to work on your project. And again, project-based to really help it take it to the next level there. Now, all of our courses, or at least these larger ones, the 10-week and the 8-week, have payment plans to help out, from 3-month plans to 6-month plans and 12-month payment plans as well. Now, if you're working with a team, maybe you have some colleagues or partners of yours looking to learn together, we do offer team training opportunities as well. Custom schedule, content from our catalog, or something custom for yourself, really helping you and your team excel in a certain topic or in this realm in general. Again, big day for us today at CircuitStream. New website, launched several short courses. So check out our educational programs at circuitstream.com/learning. We would love to have you with us. And if it's not in one of our courses, feel free to reach out. We'd be more than happy to offer any insight we can, best practices, or next steps to help you. If you have questions, again, feel free to reach out to myself, to my colleague Vlad in the audience, to my colleague Kyle backstage as well. We'd be more than happy to help answer any questions you may have. But I would like to take this time to invite Ozzy back onto the stage here. Maybe he'll also show you his own VR game that he created. But I'm just going to see and scan through the questions here as Ozzy makes his way onto the stage. So let me just increase Ozzy's screen here because we don't want to see the Q&A slide. Hey, Ozzy, good seeing you, buddy.
How are you doing?
Doing well. It has been a while. But now lots of great questions here in the chat. Now I'm going to sort it out by upvotes. Now I know AJ Creek has been answering some of the questions there backstage. AJ, thank you very much for going out and helping some of those questions we have. But here's one for you, Ozzy, from Adam Powers. How would he or someone insert a 3D avatar within the VR video experience?
All right, let me see here. Sorry, one sec, just resizing. So inserting a 3D avatar, you can imagine it like, you saw how I made a parent-child relationship between the sphere, that was the actual 360 image, and those gates, right? Or anything. When I moved the parent object, the child object moved. So with that same principle, what you could do is take the 3D model of a head, make that a child of the VR camera, and take the hand models and make them children of those, those cubes we did, except you could replace the cubes with the hand models. And if you wanted to create a whole body avatar, there'll be quite a bit of calculations in terms of, should the shoulders move with what, how is the body balancing? And that can get pretty complex. There is a pretty amazing plugin. I think it's called Kinematic, I think is the name of it. And that gives you a VR rig, body rig, that is actually really good. It's probably the best one you can find. Otherwise, you can use a combination of physics, joints, and stuff to make your avatar, which is tricky. Maybe not the best performance that you're looking for. Or you could use a combination of physics, joints, and coding to make it work well, or just code in the behavior relative to your controllers of the rest of the body. So a lot of options when it comes to creating an avatar. So yeah, it gets crazy.
Awesome, thanks there. And then there's one here from Eric Bubar as well, and I saw Eric's been active in the chat, so really appreciate it, Eric. But is a tool like the Gear 360 camera good for getting 360 pictures, videos, content, essentially, for developing these kinds of experiences?
Yeah, I don't see why not. It's just a matter of what quality imaging do you need for your experience. Because, maybe you don't need an 8K image for your 360 photo, right? That's totally up to you how much you're able to afford there. But the Gear 360 camera, it's been a while since I've looked at that, but yeah, I don't see why not.
Well, I mean, we could always look into it for you there, Eric, and get back to you. But I think that's some good insight there, Ozzy. Yeah, fabulous. And then we got here one from Kurt. Now, Kurt says that he's used Google Street View to capture 360 images on his iPhone. What hardware do you recommend to capture 360 videos?
Oh, okay. I had one in mind. One sec.
Great question there. Great question, Kurt.
Can you bring up the next question? I'm just going to try and find a link to the thing I was talking about.
Sure, no problem. Well, I'll keep this one open, but let me just scan through here, see if there's anything that I myself, as a technical expert, may be able to answer. So we had Miguel ask about VR hardware requirements. So again, for anyone interested in, what are the hardware requirements to be able to actually render these experiences or to work with it on your computer? I did answer Miguel's question in the chat, but we created a blog article called VR Hardware Requirements. And it really goes into depth about, what you should look at in terms of computer, GPU levels, CPU levels, MacBooks versus PCs, some suggestions into what to invest into, some affordable, budget-friendly ones, some higher-end ones. So there's also a Steam VR test as well on there. So for those of you who are using PCs and are just curious to know whether your current computer can handle this type of work, there's a link that you click on. It goes into Steam. You run the test on your computer, and it will give you a red light, a yellow light, or a green light in terms of where it sits. Green, you're good to go. Yellow, may run into some issues. Red, can't do it, can't handle it, need to invest into something more.
It's gonna probably take me some time. Let's bank this one, and we'll
Cool.
send you some recommendations, hardware on through emails and stuff.
Perfect.
Try and put that through to everyone in like the email that we send.
Now here's another one from Eric, and I know you touched up on it a little bit. It's about the Oculus Link. But Eric's asking, if my PC isn't compatible with Link, is it worth investing in one that is? He's been building and running each time, and he wants to test which works fine. Is there something he's missing out on by not having that Link functionality?
Okay, that's a good question. For me, developing for the Quest, it makes it so much faster that I don't have to build and run every time. Like, it is literally the ability to just hit play in Unity, and while you're in play mode, see everything that's happening and see that, oh, you know, this is going wrong, or this error occurred because you have a null reference exception. All these amazing features that are available just by having your headset plugged into your computer, it is hard to deny the value that is going to dramatically increase the rate at which you're developing. And oftentimes you may be stuck guessing why if you don't make a good simulated hand, of course. With that said, in terms of building faster, there's this thing called a patch instead. So if you were to go to your build settings and you wanted to build, you can check a developmental build, and then there's an option called scripts only build. That does allow you to build much faster. And I'll show that again here. I'll share my screen and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Share my screen. So if you go to your build settings, so file, build settings, if you select your build and you put it into developmental build, there's a scripts only build. You can do that whenever you change just your scripts, build it, that'll be much faster. But yeah, just being able to hit play, test it out, is just incredibly useful.
Fabulous. Now, and Honey just had a question or comment in the chat, and I assume it's riffing off of the Oculus Link question there as well. And I've seen it come across many times, but would love to hear your insights there, Ozzy. Is the Link available for Mac in terms of compatibility?
I don't think so. You could use Boot Camp. I think you could try and make it work with Boot Camp. I'm not saying you should, right? Apple, not saying they should. Just saying that's an option.
Perfect. And now, Jamie Torres here had a question as well. Would it be fairly simple to incorporate a scene from, say, Maya or Unreal?
Maya or Unreal? Sorry, what? Oh, would it be fairly simple to incorporate a scene? Yeah, I don't see why not. Yeah. So the idea when it comes to bringing in things from outside, what you're looking to do essentially is bring in a 3D model that is a series of FBX files or OBJ files. Mm-hmm. So FBX, OBJ, these work with Unreal, these work with Unity, and Maya can export in those two formats. So yeah, totally easy. There's no craziness involved in that.
Perfect. Awesome. And now there was one from Will here, and I assume that he's not answering another question in the chat, but he was wondering, does a program like Matterport put those 360 images to create a dollhouse you can visit? Like put 3D scanned items in and interact with in VR, or does Unity do that?
That would be done outside of Unity. Unity simply, you have your 3D models. You've created what the physical appearances of things are externally outside of Unity 99% of the time. Like anything that's more complex than a cube or a sphere, more complex than that stuff, you're probably created it outside of Unity in a 3D modeling software or using some sort of image capture, or in the case of Matterport, the 3D scanner that they have. There is this thing called, if I go up to Window Package Manager, there's this brush app that is a package in Unity. I'm trying to remember, Pro Builder, I think it was. I think Pro Builder is what it's called. And with that, you can make more complex geometry in Unity. And there's other assets on the asset store that give you similar functionality, but nothing like scanning in that nature. I think Vuforia has what's called area targets now, where you can literally walk around with your iPhone 12 or the latest iPads and like use the LiDAR sensors on those devices and scan the world as well. That is, I've literally never owned an iPhone, but I am gonna, for the first time in my life, buy an iPhone 12 because of the LiDAR.
I know, and I'm between. I'm gonna move from iPhone to Android, and then I saw that come out. I was like, God, I guess I'll stay. Just want to change it up a little bit, but that makes sense. And I had another great question here from from Julian. How does the audio sounds in the 360 videos? Like, do we have to work it through an HRTF plugin, or how does that really work?
So when it comes to the audio stuff, you would either use a plugin or you would have to try and figure out when to create spatial audio. Now, generally speaking, the audio source that you provide, if it's stereo audio, it'll kind of be just handled on its own. If it's more complex, where you really need it to be more spatialized than what it's probably good enough to be on its own, then you would have to use some sort of plugin, or you would have to create multiple audio sources that have spatial audio included. So if I was to create a audio source, right, this is going to be a source of sound. This is going to have some options like spatial blend. You can create a totally 3D sound. So if I'm standing here, I can definitely tell the sound is coming from there. And you create a series of those if it's really complex. But generally speaking, it's probably good when you bring them.
Perfect. And I'm just answering Kurt there. Might as well say here, good to know, Kurt. Thanks for letting me know. Really considering the LiDAR there.
For me, it's going to be like, I'll take the LiDAR scan data and just improve on it in something like Blender. That was the goal. I'll have to figure out what I can do with that. But yeah, it's super fun. I'm just going to take a scan of my entire house and just make an AR app that no matter where you are in my house, there's like ghosts popping out or things on the wall that talk and all that stuff. Make my house into a fun house in AR.
Yeah, and I see Zach's picking up an iPhone Pro 12 Max. Whoa, this weekend.
Oh, nice.
Jeez.
Congrats, Zach. Congrats.
Yeah, that's big. But here's a question from Amanda about 7 minutes ago. And Amanda, feel free to clear it up in chat. But the question is it possible to let the player walk around a little inside the image? I assume these ones we were working with in 360 videos.
Yes, totally. And based on the way we did it, it is already able to do that. So if I created a sphere, here we are, it's the sphere. Let's just pretend this one's inside out. One of the things, a cool technique to implement or consider implementing, is to have a plane that intersects it like this, right? And you're inside of it and you see the ground as some sort of texture. Maybe it's not cutting in exactly half, probably closer, it depends how you want to do this. But this dome is really big and it's really far away. Person's in there, and then they can walk around on this plane, and then it feels a little bit more natural. You may also combine it with the skybox and some geometry here or there if need be. But yeah, currently the way we made it, you can walk around a little bit. However, the bigger you make the sphere, the less noticeable that effect is. So you can kind of mess around with that, the sizing of that sphere.
Right. Perfect. Let's see what we got here next. Let me just pop into the chat here. Let's see. Let's go into the questions tab first, and then we'll get to Steven's comment there in the chat. We have one from Chico Edin. Edin is asking, can I place an object from Gravity Sketch into the 360 photo?
So if, and I don't remember Gravity Sketch, but if you can export the object as an FBX file or an OBJ file, you'll have no problem bringing it into Unity. And place an object from gravity section into the 360 photo. If you mean like you want to edit the sphere itself to contain that, to contain the texture, there are some super complex ways of doing that. But there's also a simpler way where you have the sphere and it has its image, and then you create a second sphere that is kind of in front of that image, and then the second sphere is see-through, except the part that you want on top of the image. So those are kind of the two things. Is a Quest 3D modeling software. Then I'm positive that you could bring that into Unity.
Perfect. And then let's see what we got here. Zach, so hopefully we may have covered this, but I'm not exactly sure. Was the shader you used, Ozzy, double-sided? He's wondering because he would like to create, able to view the 360 content from outside as well as inside.
So the shader that we provide in this is not double-sided. It's only inside out. However, double-sided shaders are readily available for free.
Perfect.
It would be the same process, just different shader file.
Awesome. Then let's see what else we got here. I got to scroll back to the top, see if there's anything else. But there was one from Steven here in the chat. And he was saying, and I'm sure you can see it there as well. Would it be easy to grab a sphere in, pull it towards your headset, and open the new 360 image like the lab in Steam?
Open a new 360 image? So the key thing there would be the grabbing function. So that would be a different input. So you grab. By the way, as anyone who's interested in Quest and Oculus development, you have to use, whenever you have a grab function, you have to use their grip. So you have your first finger. If you're ever going to grab something, you have to use the middle finger. It's part of their manual requirements. Just a cool thing to check out whenever you're developing for a system. See what their requirements are, because some of them are so damn specific that, you know, it's like you can't grab with this. You have to grab with this. If you look at like the Xbox, Microsoft stuff, every time you hit start, that becomes player one. That's like default across all Xbox games. They're building that environment so that people have to think less about how they're grabbing something. Anyways, the question at hand. What was it was again, where did it go?
Question
would
from
it be? Okay, yeah,
Steven. Yeah.
So first, the grabbing. Now that I've explained the caveat there, you could probably get away with a simple, you know, touch it with an on trigger enter, grab it. Once you've grabbed it, make it a child, bring it to your head, make another collider, on trigger enter with the sphere, and then change the scene. Just like as if you were reaching out and grabbing that gate. The moment you did that, you switch to the next gate, and then maybe this gate that you pulled towards yourself snaps back to the original position. It wouldn't be too much work. I've done portals that would behave very much the same, but yeah.
Right. Yeah, perfect. Now, there's one thing that I did want to call out that I did miss earlier today, and my apologies. We here at Circus Stream are also holding an open house coming up very soon, meaning, you know, feel free to join us, ask about any of our courses, programs, work that we do here at Circus Stream. Really just an open invitation for everyone to come in, get to know us a little better. So if my colleagues are backstage there, they'll be tossing in links to the open house. And we also do have course information sessions that are coming up as well. So if you want to get some more information about a certain course, feel free to check it out, join those information sessions. And, you know, we'll invite some alumni, some people sharing some stories, what they've done after the course and so on. So check those out. We would love to have you there with us as well. But, you know, I'm going through the questions tab here one last time, and I want to say that we had answered everything. And by we, I mean you, Ozzy, and AJ Creek here had answered most of the stuff. But, you know, this is one that Jaden had. And it's, why would you want to make a virtual tour in Unity? What can it do that Matterport or MetaReal can't. And AJ did touch up on it a little bit in terms of if one were to want to interact, or if there's some sort of interactivity involved, the game engine would be ideal. But what's your insight there?
Well, yeah, that's actually the biggest thing. I think the best example I can bring up is when we worked with, dang it, you remember the company that creates those? VMware. We worked with VMware on a campus tour VR app, and Karthik was the lead on that project. The idea behind that was they can travel between different areas in their campus to give an introduction, but the main hub had a bunch of like buttons that you can pull and point at and do some interesting stuff with before pointing and looking at like that end of the hallway, that end of the hallway. You point, click, and that's just you navigating between scenes. But the main hub, there's a lot of things you can do in that app as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you definitely want, more than just simple navigation. That you can definitely want the access to a game engine for sure.
Perfect.
Yeah. If you want, I can share my game.
Yes, let's do it. I think those are all the questions on that. Hey, feel free to toss in some more questions, guys, but Ozzy is going to share this little game that he created. I think it's super cool, so can't wait to see it again.
Oh, yeah. I've made some progress on it, too.
Oh, yeah. Very nice. I like.
So this time on the left side is the scene view. And on the right side is going to be the game view. Let me quickly just make sure to select my VR rig. There we go. Okay. All right, guys. All right. Let's just hit play. Let's give this a go. Here we are. I'm just going to put on my straps because there's some throwing involved.
It's always so you need those straps if you have to throw anything.
Exactly. All right, I'll try and do this quick. Yeah, so this one, it's kind of like a mix between Harry Potter and Overlord. I don't know if some of you guys have seen that game, but it is. You can say something like Infernum, and that would allow you to choose a spell, right? And then you shoot that spell onto the ground. There you are. And you can cast the regular spell. You hold the grip, and you can choose between these different ball orbs what spell you want to fire. And then you can combine things.
That's cool. I'm looking at both of those screens there, the game view and the other view. Very cool.
So those are the things, and then I've got like this whole new telekinesis. Oh, I got the telekinesis, but I got this thing where you like reach behind your back and you can just summon axes and throw them as you please. Whoa. And just infinite axes that you can just throw as you please. And then you have like, you can out of your sides, you can bring in a shield, bring in an axe, and just go crazy with ghost weapons. And then there's also like, you can jump up, and if you hold it, you like float down. You can do that. And there's telekinesis you can do. Bring it closer and further. You go crazy with it, and you got your little ghost pet follows you around. Yeah. You can also like sit on one of these. Anyways, I think those are the biggest updates so far. Yeah, it's a good time.
Very nice. And Eric just had a question here in the chat. Is that all solo developed, and what platform were you aiming it for?
So largely aiming for the Vive right now. Going to be agnostic. Going to eventually try and get it onto the Oculus store. It's just definitely a lot harder to get onto Oculus's store than it is the Vive. I am a part like this, the 3D models, for example, I didn't make the particles. There's a nice system in place that allowed me to just kind of edit what's there. Apart from that, everything else is what I made.
Perfect.
Yeah, all the mechanics, moving around, jumping, how you're shooting, what you're able to do, moving around. The throwing mechanics, I have to say, are probably the best. Sorry, I'm like trying not to hit stuff. There you go. Like, I don't think I've come across a better throwing thing. Will you put it on side quest? Maybe. Like, check out. Wait. Like, have you like, I made that my first shot. All right. Have you ever been able to throw something that accurately in VR? Come on.
Awesome.
Right.
Wonderful. Well, hey, again, I'm going to take a quick look on the questions tab here. Seems like there's nothing left to answer. Unless there's any last minute questions here, feel free to toss them in the chat or the questions tab. But, in the meantime here, Ozzy, thank you again so much for joining me today and leading the 360 Tours technical portion of the presentation. Truly a pleasure and an honor to have you leading this with me again. Yes, Zach, question in the chat here. Are you going to be emailing the GitHub repo? We will. We'll send over the recording, the GitHub project files, everything you need and that we covered today will be sent to you and to everyone else who joined us for the workshop and webinar. But again, taking a quick look into the questions tab, nothing new here. Ozzy did just put the GitHub there. And as Kyle just said in the chat, thank you everyone for joining us for another Circuit Stream workshop and webinar. We'll be sure to continue hosting these ones for you. Feel free to join as many as you can. But in the meantime, have a wonderful night for those of you in North America, a great morning for those of you abroad. Feel free to check out more workshops and webinars, our open sessions and open houses. And if you have any questions or would like to join us one day, feel free to reach out. We'd be more than happy to help. But with this, I'm going to wrap it up here. Don't want to take too much of your time. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us for this workshop and webinar. Thank you to the team backstage for answering some questions and tossing in resources. And the man, the legend, Ozzy, thank you again. Really appreciate it. But
Thanks everyone for coming.
Yeah, thank you everyone. Have a wonderful night, and we'll be sure to see you all again soon. Take care.
Cheers.